Labour meeting with federal government ends in deadlock as NNPCL increases petroleum pump price nationwide. Nigerians groan as motorists hike transport fares amid fuel price increments. Nigeria's tax to GDP ratio 10.86% for 2021, not 6%, says the Federal Inland Revenue Service, plus all rises on potential U.S. rate hike pause, debt bill passing. This is Business Express on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA, and we're reaching you from Abuja, the nation's capital. I am Leah Katung Babatunde. You're welcome. Begin by telling you that NNPC Limited this Wednesday adjusted the pump price of petrol PMS to 537 naira per litre across its retail outlets. A statement from the company says it is in line with the current market realities. Naturally, the change already reflected in most NNPC Limited retail stations is not limited to the company, as most major and independent marketers had continued to unveil new prices. Lydia Sampson has more.
Visit to petrol stations in Abuja revealed the different prices, with motorists sharing their experiences. While some are calling for patience and understanding, others say movement with their personal vehicles will now be calculated.
My observation was, when he just finished, very short time, and I saw 7 liters. And I began to wonder. I said, how much is your pump price? So he now told me it's 537 naira displayed on the pump. I was shocked.
We are just seeing different prices. So some are selling 600, some you just see differently. I'll have to calculate my movement. Because if I should get full tank now, I will have to think before leaving the house. I'll make sure that that thing I'm going to do is going to be profitable before I go out. I will not just go out anyhow.
Whatever will be good may not be easy, but let's be patient. All will be well.
195 naira. I buy it here. But the mega station, they are selling 537 just this morning today.
In every situation, there are some exceptions.
Obviously, a new petrol pump price is in town, but some petrol stations are still selling at the old price, like the one where we are here. They say they are still selling at 195 until they get further directives from their headquarters. And such petrol stations, believe me, are overwhelmed with motorists.
Long queues could only be seen where some major marketers are still selling at the old price of 195 per litre. Sources of camera say they will start implementing the new price after exhausting their current product. Some say the competition that subsidy removal will bring is beginning to manifest. Determined to have a feel of the new pump, I drove into one of the petrol stations selling at 540, and it was a seamless experience. This could mean the end of scarcity and long queues in Nigeria. This is more so as NNPC Limited reiterates that it is in line with deregulation and prices will continue to fluctuate to reflect market dynamics. In Abuja, Lydia Sampson.
Meanwhile, a meeting between the organized labor unions and representatives of the federal government to avert a looming agitation on the upward review of petrol price has ended in deadlock. The meeting was held at the State House, Abuja.
The president called for a meeting of government and the labor. And you have seen the labor union, the president of the NLC, the president of TUC, and all their executive members are here. And we've been deliberating on finding very, very amicable resolution to the issue at hand. to the queue and all of that, and the increase in pump price. And we had a very robust engagement. The impact on the poorest of the poor in the society would be very minimal. That's part of the talks that are going on between government and labor.
So that has not been determined yet, the intervention?
That's part of the talks going on.
What are the prayers of the NLC?
The prayers of NLC is that we go back to status quo, negotiate, think of alternatives and all the effects and how to manage the effects this action is going to have on the people, if it is an action that must take off.
Now, away from subsidy removal, in his inaugural speech, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu set out an ambitious target of growing the nation's economy by 6%. Now, this goal has since sparked a conversation among Nigerians. As the largest economy in Africa, Nigeria has the potential to become an economic powerhouse with the right policies and leadership. President Tinubu's target is a bold statement of intent. And on Business Express this morning, we'll be discussing its feasibility and the potential impact on the economy. Dr. Emeka Okengu is an economist, and he joins me to share his thoughts on this very important topic. You're welcome, Doctor, to Business Express.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay. So perhaps we start by you telling me 6% target set out by President Tinubu to grow the economy. How feasible is that target?
Very, very. Remembering that we are grown, our economy up to 7.5 to 8%, before we ran into our first recession. So it's not ambitious, it's doable. Okay, all you need to do, like you said in your intro, is the right policies, the right leadership, ability to take maybe some tough or hard decisions, and then, have, what you call programs and actions tied to your policies, and then we're good to go.
So in terms of policies, what perhaps are we looking at?
Realignments. You see, you have a lot of silos. First and foremost, it has to start with your MDAs. Okay, you must realign the functions, the relationships with your NGAs. You must now be able to probably, group them into three broad, areas of intervention. With the NGAs, the MDAs you call interventionist, vis-a-vis administrative, the ones that you call operational, and then the ones that you call research and development. The moment you have them aggregated, and in this state, what am I talking about? What you need to grow an economy, first and foremost, is the right skill sets. Okay, we have, for instance, doubtedly, about 64 million hectares of land that is arable, out of which very little is in cultivation. Now imagine if we didn't just put hoes, and the shovels on that land, and we put technology. Okay, per hectare yield, when you're using technology, could give you as much as 10 times what your farm hoe style will give to you. Now look at us with 320 dams in Nigeria, and we're importing averagely about 1.8 million metric tons of fish. Now imagine if we were to populate only maybe 30 or 40% of those dams, with aquatic life. Imagine what that would give to us. And then you come to the mining sector. So I'm just trying to tell you that we have more than enough, for us to, run this thing. There's no local government or area in Nigeria. We have about 450, minerals. That's less than 7 of them, not even anyone fully exploited. We probably have the biggest deposits of coal, in sub-Saharan Africa. Ditto for iron ore, ditto for barites, ditto for scheelites, okay, ditto for tantalite, ditto for coltan, ditto for columbite. So, these are all the things that if you begin to focus on. So I think the first thing is get a policy that aggregates, your MDAs, that now ties it to your subnationals, and then begins to now drive towards the private sector, to be the ones, doing the dirty job of putting their hands on the till, who would surpass 8%, trust me.
Now, we over time we get to hear that the policies are actually there, but pursuing them is another issue entirely. Now we're finding ourselves in a situation where we woke up to a change in oil prices, and we're also waking up this morning to a change in the naira to dollar rate. How will this be affecting the projection?
No, it won't be very fair to say that we woke up to see a change in the naira dollar thing. The dollar has always traded. People have always sourced their dollar, at least a lot of it from the primary markets. And remember that the president in his speech had talked about consolidating, that he wanted a uniform, exchange rate. So what you're doing is that I think the CBN is taking a cue from it to now look at the realities on ground, and are moving to 630, which for me, if it's going to be available, is much more better than the 755 or 800 that people are buying from the primary markets. Now, for the first subsidy, again, I mean, it wasn't today that the subsidy was removed. It was removed, since the last administration. But the only thing that happened, that the argument people are making, is that, okay, even if you remove, why didn't you now, make a pronouncement to say, okay, remember that after June the 30th, there won't be any more subsidies. It would have been a better way to place it. And again, it's even a little bit more worrisome that you have, like from your intro, the Vox post you've done, the major marketers are still selling at 195 naira. NNPC, that is now the importer that sells to the major marketers, have changed their prices. So this is a little bit, for me personally, worrisome. I keep saying it, and I've kept telling you each time we have a conversation, we have no business, doing subsidy the way we do it in Nigeria. Because as long as you're doing subsidy or putting subsidy to something that's already produced, what you're doing is you're doing what they call price differentials. Subsidy must be introduced, along the lines of production if it's going to be effective. So if you're removing price differentials, there must be some kind of system. Some people will call it social protection, some people will call it social services. There has to be something that will cushion this effect, because fuel is just not a luxury in Nigeria. Fuel is the driver, is the foundation of our economy. People will tell you that it's diesel. I was having this conversation with somebody. He says, oh, our foods move in trucks. I say, how many trucks do you have operating in Nigeria? You'll be shocked that in the whole of the country, you might have less than 3,000 trucks, and a lot of them are not even on the road. So even if we are the trucks operating and then the diesel cost is too high, a lot of these small shops will get yam from here, this from here. This morning when I was leaving my house, I practically overloaded my vehicle. Anybody I could see, to give a ride, I did. And some will say, oh, they got to the point and they were asking them to pay 700 naira, and all he had in his pocket was 300 naira. So you see somebody who's already frustrated, hasn't even gotten to work. So if he manages to get to work, he can't even be able to eat. Now, if he manages to even eat, he can't be able to get home. And then imagine when it rains, and then he closes from work and it begins to rain. So these are the things that we must take into consideration in our building, quickly. But in growing, again, this is where the link comes. How quickly can we be able to now do what the president have done, go to the rural areas, which is mentioned, begin to now focus on the rural economies. How quickly can we deploy? For me, the first thing he should do is to, like I said to you in my intro, get all the agencies together. At the heart of this march must be the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation, and everybody that has to do with it, so that we can begin to now get innovative in applying our research outputs. Now, the subnationals, Leah, are also very important. Remembering that this land we are talking about does not belong to the federal, it's not even under the control of, it's under the control of the states. Now, the president must, as a matter of urgency, call a meeting of all the state governors, and everybody is on the same page. So we're no longer talking about states. We'll now begin to talk about owned, co-shared infrastructure against probably, our land space. So nobody is talking about Kaduna, whereas you can be passing into Kaduna and some part of it is in Nasarawa, some other part of it is in Benue. But if we had land, Nigerian land, no matter where it crosses, we can begin to now establish food belts, mineral corridors, okay, and then begin to now build infrastructure along that street. This would help us. But more importantly, government must find an alternative to fuel. There must be. If otherwise, there's no way we can survive this.
Okay, so while we're looking at these alternatives, over time we've had, for instance, agencies like SMIDEM come up with the one local government, one product target. We've also had in recent times NEPC targeting commodities for export. How do you think we can actually pursue these policies differently at the subnational in conjunction with the federal to see that indeed we end this forex that has become a sort of a need for the entire country?
If you have a bottom-up thing, that's what I'm saying to you, that the subnationals are very critical in when you're doing this, you're planning. Okay, you just don't wake up and do a policy and then say you want to engage X amount of people, you want to grow this. First and foremost, you must also have land delineation. Okay, we must be able to have proper mapping of a land. Tell you must be able to now know what can grow on that land. I'm talking about agriculture now. Now, have you done your soil test? Do you have a soil bank? Now, third, you must now have your inputs. Inputs being the seedlings you're going to be putting there. Do you have, nurseries, okay, that can grow your seeds? Do you have research institutes that can be able to now make certain that you lock in these seeds, the ones you need to break their DNAs to now suit the soil? Okay. Now, for mining, have you done your exploration? It's not enough to do, basic exploration. You need to go to what they call depth probing. How many boreholes of mining do you have in Nigeria? Have you been able to do this? Who is supposed to do this? Do you have the skill? So it's just not enough for you to wake up and say, oh, we have this program to grow commodity. What commodity are you growing? Where are you getting the seedlings? Where are you getting your inputs? Where are you getting your storage? Where are you getting your power? Okay? Now, where are you getting your transportation? Who and who is going to be involved? What amount of land do you need? Now, these are not questions you answer through a policy.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the policy is the wish. Now, the program begins to answer these questions. The action is now where everybody who is supposed to be, involved in that mix coming together. This is where you have people who interrogate it. You have people who would be able to now question it. You have people who will be able to, present advisories, and everybody is carried along. For instance, we can now decide, okay, we have a lot of, livestock coming from the Kaduna, Adamawa, Bauchi angle. Do we make that our livestock belt? Now, what do you need to keep this livestock? Do we even have, any commercial program to produce forage? With 24 million cattle, Leah, you'll be surprised that we don't even have any garden for forage production. So how do you now stop these animals from going to be destroying what people plant on their farms? Because they need to eat. Now, these are not the things you capture in a policy. These are the things you capture in a framework, in a development framework that must be able to answer, these small but very important questions. But I think the problem we have in Nigeria is that a lot of the times our policies would negate these things, and then so they just present a policy, and then people begin to interrogate the president's speech, just like what has happened. Just because he said it, look at what the after effects have become. Whereas the right thing should have been, okay, now this thing people would have just gone in quickly, but for NNPC to have woken up the next day after the president made that statement, and then had even come out with an official statement to say subsidy was still going to be there till June. And they went to start changing their prices. And the reasons they gave, for me, the way I interpreted it, is that probably they're paying higher subsidy. Because what they said, the language I read, I stand to be corrected, is market reality. Okay, now market reality does not mean you have removed subsidy. Market reality could mean that the product has gotten more expensive. So they need to come out clearly to say, have you removed this subsidy? If yes, does it mean that you have disobeyed the president who says subsidy is still there? And then these other private major marketers that are, selling at this control price, they should be praised. Okay, again, there should be some kind of level of, inquisition to say, okay, NMCC hitherto had been exclusive. They had the exclusive right of importing fuel. Does it mean that anybody who wants to import can now go and get a license and import? or is that exclusivity still going to remain with them? These are the questions that must be answered and answered very quickly.
I think they actually said they're going to issue license to those who want to import. But, Doctor, we're going to end the conversation here. Thank you so much for joining me this morning on Business Express.
It's a pleasure to
have
be
a
here.
blessed day.
Thank you very much.
And oil prices rose on Thursday, reversing earlier losses as a potential pause in U.S. interest rate hikes and the debt ceiling bill passing a crucial vote renewed optimism about further fuel demand in the world's biggest oil consumer. Brent crude futures rose 32 cents to $72.92 a barrel in early deals, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude rose 25 cents to $68.34 a barrel. Gold prices held steady as traders measure Federal Reserve's policy path. Let's see the prices of other commodities. Now, ahead of the promised tax reforms by the present administration, the Executive Chairman, Federal Inland Revenue Service, Mohammed Nami, is of the view that it is time for government to consider reviewing policies on tax waivers, thereby guaranteeing increased revenue to prosecute government business and improve the country's tax to GDP ratio. This is, as Nami reveals, the latest tax to GDP ratio that grew from 6% to 10.86%, the highest in 12 years. Nami attributed the growth to ongoing reforms that are impacting on business processes to include blockage of leakages.
Okay, if people are complaining of being overtaxed, where are these tax revenues going? Then we look at what has been happening in the past, we discover that taxes and levies that hitherto are collected by ministries, departments, and agencies that are collecting them. These taxes and levies are not accounted for in the course of computing tax to gross domestic product of this country.
This is in addition to royalties brought to FAC, among other taxes. Nami says with the continued deployment of technology and efforts at centralizing data, Nigerians should expect improved figures for 2022 to be revealed soon.
Being stopped or removed, I will not be in a position to advise anybody or the National Assembly to say that we should increase our tax rate. What we should do is we'll continue to work on building infrastructure that will give us the opportunity to be able to have a seamless view or bring every tax intelligence together in a centralized data bank so that we are able to raise revenue. The leakages are so much, the informal sector is very huge.
Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu now holds a record for the Nigerian leader to trigger the biggest gain in the stock market since 1999 as the market remained green in midweek trade. At the end of Wednesday's session, a total of 661.5 million shares in 10,024 deals corresponding to a market value of 18.9 billion naira were traded, with market capitalization at 30.4 trillion naira. Access Holdings recorded the highest volume of 98.7 million traded shares, followed by United Bank for Africa at 90.2 million and Zenith Bank 44.5 million. Asian markets mostly high as U.S. debt ceiling bill passes House vote. Let's join Boss Dable for the details. The stock markets opened higher Thursday amid hopes that the drama over the U.S. debt ceiling was entering its final stages. Asia markets were mostly higher on Thursday after the bill to raise the U.S. debt ceiling was passed in the House of Representatives, advancing it to the Senate just days ahead of the default deadline. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 saw a 0.84% gain to close at 31,148.01. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index rebounded after touching bear market territory, rising 0.34%. Mainland Chinese markets were also higher, with Shanghai Composite marginally up and the Shenzhen Composite rising 0.39%. U.S. stock futures were mixed on Thursday morning after the U.S. House advanced the debt ceiling bill in a crucial step to avoid a U.S. default, advancing it to the Senate just days ahead of the default deadline. Futures on the Dow Jones Industrial Average was close to flatline. S&P 500 futures up 0.14%, while Nasdaq 100 futures were flat. South Africa, JSE Africa Top 40 and Namibia's overall index opened positive in Africa, while others are still maintaining previous figures. Bosse De Ebo, Business Express. Thank you, Bosse, and we end the program here. Business Express returns tomorrow at 3 p.m. We wish you a very beautiful day and God bless Nigeria.